3 years into business, and I strongly believe that sharing openly is the key to success, the key to happiness, and the key to creating an environment to promote these two things, to encourage these two things. Success, happiness, and whatever you think is important to you, sharing openly is going to help you get there. Hi, my name is Hawk, and I am the owner of Hawk Fitness, an online fitness coaching business. And I'm making these videos to kind of document my own lessons and my thoughts that I've had ever since I started my own business, and as I'm focusing on my own personal growth and self-development. And I'm doing so in hopes that some of these insights, some of my own thoughts, can inspire your own thoughts and therefore actions in your own personal development journey. Alright, so as I was talking about sharing openly, right? And this is something that hasn't been easy for me since birth, really. So I grew up in, well, a very typical Asian family, right? And this typical Asian family, I guess, is not so typical in the sense that there's some typicalness, right, from a lot of other Asian families, but my family don't talk much. Like even till this day, we just don't talk that much. I'm putting in more effort to talk more with them. It's just not as easy as I'm able to do so with, other people around me, my friends, new people. Especially the new people that I'm meeting. Obviously it's going to be much easier because there's no trained habits in terms of interacting with these new people. But when it comes to like family, it's just that much harder to kind of break out of this cycle of actually not talking much, right? And as I was growing up, we don't talk much, we don't share much within our family, and that's why I grew up always thinking about like independence and always thinking that asking for help is... I didn't necessarily think of it as a weakness, but I think subconsciously, I didn't consciously think of it as a weakness, but subconsciously there was definitely an aspect where I felt like I don't have to be asking for help. Maybe even to the extent of I shouldn't be asking for help, simply because like I always thought that I can do all this myself. I don't need help. Don't worry, I got this. I'm strong, and whatnot. Right? And again, like this really all came from the fact that my family just didn't talk much. We didn't share much. I didn't ask for help much, or rather, sometimes I ask for help. Maybe like going overseas, and I'm like shot down, because of money and all that stuff, right? I just wasn't in an environment that encouraged sharing. And yeah, like if I look at my father right now, he's deaf. Like my parents are just not people to share as well, right? They don't share their problems. They don't share what goes well. Well, the sad thing is, I guess it's not a sad thing, but like, because they don't share much of the good and the bad, and I think in the past few years, what ends up happening is they are only talking, like if they ever talk about anything, it's just like the more serious, not so great stuff. I'm not going to go into details about that, but it's just like health issues, right? And yeah, so because of that, I think whenever something comes out, it becomes a bit negative, it becomes a bit bad. It creates an environment, a culture where there's just no celebration, even for the minor things, even for the big things, really. So yeah, that's like the story behind this, right? Like me not being able to share, or me not having the environment to practice sharing more, and why it was so hard for me to actually like step out and actually start sharing. So back in uni, it was the same thing. I didn't ask for help. At that point, I had friends who actually told me like, Hawk, you need to share more. You need to ask for help more. Like, you don't have to do everything yourself. At that point, I was still damn stubborn. I was still very stubborn. Like, I said that I would try, and I did try, but like, like I never really stepped out of that well enough to say that, you know, I was asking for help, well enough to say that I was actually allowing and being willing to accept help. So it's really not until I started my own business, right? The fitness coaching business. So I transitioned from personal training to online fitness coaching. So meaning from in-person to online. And it's not till I started growing my own team and not till I started having to lead my own team, right? To delegate responsibilities, that I started to learn more about asking for help, and that I started to allow myself to share more openly, right? When I first started the business, when it was still pretty much like in person, I was still alone, I wasn't asking for help. I was very stubborn. Sure, I reached out for like business coaching, I invested in business coaching, but even at that point, like I was just getting what I needed for myself, and I was not like sharing things. Like I was very hesitant to share. And even I probably from the outside, you probably won't know that that was the case. Like from the outside, you probably thought that I was sharing with my business coaches and stuff like that. But there was always like this element of things that I was always hiding. You know, like I was never like sharing like I was struggling with this. I never said like struggle, like, or maybe I have this problem, I want to solve this. It's very like logical. It's very like cold and objective. Maybe they sensed it, but at least my intention of sharing was never like sharing and placing myself in a position of vulnerability, right? I didn't want to sound weak, right? The male ego. Yeah, so at the start of the business, it was like that. You know, I was still not asking for help, and then at that point when I started hiring, assistants, I started engaging contractors to ask for help. That's when it started to change for me, right? I was still, at that point, I was kind of like just instructing people to do things, and I wasn't really sharing things because these are contractors. They're not really part of my team. And only at some point that I realized, like, you know what? There are very different leadership styles, and I am definitely not the kind of, I don't want to be the leader that is the kind that just tells people what to do. And, you know, even if it's not like aggressively, I don't want to be telling people what to do. There was a period of time that I struggled with that. I was a bit douchey, and I admitted that to my team members as well. Right? It's only then when I realized, like, okay, I want to transition to a style of leadership that works for me and is in line with the beliefs that I have. Right? Like I believe that people can and should be allowed to lead themselves. I believe that people should be treated respectfully, should be able to make their own decisions, and I believe that people should have their own space to grow, right? Like focusing on progression over perfection. And that was a key thing for me. Like once I realized that these were my values for myself, and it doesn't make, this was my values for myself, and these were the values that I also wanted my team to have, all the team members to have, that shifted things for me, right? Like because it would be misaligned, it would be hypocritical of me. Not so much, it's not so important whether I was hypocritical, sure that's important, but that's not the main thing. But in order for me to be aligned and consistent with who I am and what I want, how I want, and I want my team members to be able to have these values as well. In order for us to do that, to accomplish that and have an environment to do that, I had to share more. I had to be more open with sharing my thoughts, my feelings, my struggles, and of course also at the same time sharing openly about my appreciation for them, for people, right? Yeah, and the reason why that is important is because, like, if I wasn't sharing openly and I expected them to share openly and I expected them to work on progression, not perfection, right? It just doesn't make sense, because if I'm not sharing openly and I'm not sharing with them like, okay, this is what I'm struggling with, this is something I'm also working with, how then would they be comfortable to also share that that's something that they're going through. And also, how then would you be able to influence them to be like, okay, like this guy is telling and is sharing openly about the things he's struggling with, the things that he's working on, the things that he's happy with me about. Like, that makes me feel like I can do that also. That makes me feel like what he's saying in terms of focusing on progression, in terms of self-development, in terms of like just being able to share openly is true, because he is doing it and leading by example, right? And that's really important. And like, I wanted to make this video today really is also because like it was brought about by today's one-on-one. I have one-on-one meetings, monthly one-on-one meetings with my teammates every month. Well, Monday, right? And today's one-on-one, it was recurring. This was something that they mentioned, that they really appreciate the fact that I am able to share openly, right? And the fact that they are actually being able to be more creative, to actually take more initiatives with their creative ideas, and that they are more willing to share about their own issues openly, and they're more willing to ask for help, and they're more willing to work together and communicate openly. And it's really because like they see that other people in the team are able to do that. So it's not just me, but it has to start somewhere, right? And that was something that was really intentional to create once I realized that that's the kind of leadership style that I want to have. And it really helps that the other teammates are on board with this as well, right? Obviously, if the teammates are not on board with this, if it's not a good fit, then we can go our separate ways. But more or less, once you are really more aware of how you want to be and you're sharing openly, and some people, like, you're putting your things out there, and I would say, I'm quite confident about this, but it would really encourage others to do the same, right? It doesn't matter how much, whether they do it like to 100%, because that's not something that we expect, or like it's not something that we really want to focus on, but it at least helps them to take the step up as well, right? So like I mentioned, like how sharing openly is important, and I strongly believe it's important in helping people get happier and more successful, right? So I haven't really addressed the happiness side of things, but this is like more the successful side of things. You can see, from the examples that I just shared, like how creating the environment for success is important. Like, now my teammates are able to share creatively, they are more driven to do things, and they're more willing to try different things, and we are totally cool with making mistakes, because we totally acknowledge that we need help. We acknowledge that it's always about trying things and progressing, right? And again, sharing openly has allowed people to do that, allowed the environment to do that, and allowed the people to actually do that themselves, right? So why happiness, right? So obviously, happiness, happiness is very subjective, and I think happiness is, I do believe happiness is and should be defined by every individual themselves, right? Like, I could be happy reading my manga, and some people are just looking at you and just like, why are you wasting your time reading a manga? So happiness is defined by you, and I do feel like happiness isn't bound by the things you do, and happiness is really defined by just you believing whatever makes you happy is what makes you happy, right? And in my case, I think relationships are important to me, right? And I'm talking about, I'm not talking about like, yes, friendship is one also, so I'll probably talk about that later, but a big one for me is definitely romantic relationships, right, with my partner. And not sharing openly about my own thoughts, my own beliefs, and my own feelings, it stopped me from growing as a partner, right? It stopped me from being a version of myself that is It stopped me from being a better version of myself that I wanted to be, but I wasn't allowing myself to be, simply because I just wasn't sharing openly about my thoughts and my feelings. I think with romantic relationships, it's a bit, people may feel like it's a bit more sensitive, it's a bit more like delicate, but I don't believe so. I think consistency is important, and of course maybe the way you talk to your partner is slightly different than the way you talk to your colleagues and stuff like that, but the consistency in sharing openly, the consistency in how you approach relationship matters and how you approach even work relationship matters, it's important to be consistent, right? You don't want to be, okay, like in the case of work, you are able to take feedback objectively, you're able to share your opinions objectively, you're able to share your own feelings about how you feel about certain things that you're doing at work to your colleagues or your teammates, and like you then share your own beliefs in terms of how to move forward with things, right? These are things that it should be consistent. I do believe, and this is something that I have been making an effort to do so. I do believe like this is important to also be consistent in your romantic side of things. I think many times when it comes to romantic relationships, with your life partner, I had the struggle of like just not sharing as much, and just thinking like, you know what, I'm just gonna be strong for this relationship. I will just be really nice. I want you to be happy. So I'm not going to share my feelings with you, right? I'm not going to share my thoughts with you. I'm just going to take it in and just like dissolve it on my own, right? And that doesn't work, right? It depends from person to person, but for me, what happened was like the resentment didn't build up consciously, but whenever like there were any arguments and stuff like that happened between me and my partner, what happened is I then like allowed those past issues that I pushed down to rise up, and then at that moment the resentment builds and it keeps building, right? So it really doesn't help to just keep things to yourself, right? Like I think at some point I was also really fearful that if I shared certain things, like it's gonna make the relationship sour and all that stuff. But you owe it to yourself to share your own opinions and thoughts and to be yourself in the relationship, because if you don't do that and you start to push down who you really are, what's going to happen is you're going to end up like not being the best version of yourself in the relationship. You're going to be a worse off version of yourself in the relationship, and that doesn't help anyone, right? You owe it to your partner as well to be your best version, right? The best version for yourself. And that, if that means that you have to take care of yourself, if that means that you have to share your own thoughts and opinions, you have to share openly like how you don't feel happy about certain things, you have to share those things, right? Because once you share them, now what's going to happen is your partner is going to understand like how you think, how you feel at that moment. Maybe both sides, both parties are not going to feel happy about what is going on in this argument, but if your partner truly cares for you and truly loves you, like think for you as well as herself, and both of you are still a good fit, then being open and sharing openly about all these things from both ends, from both parties, these are things that are going to help you grow as both individuals separately as well as together as a couple. Yeah, and that's something that I truly believe in, and that's something that I only realized after, well, I had to, after going in and out of relationships, right? Not sticking to one relationship. I'm not telling you to not stick to one relationship, but I'm saying that sharing openly is going to help you a great deal. It's going to help you as an individual a great deal, and you have to be your best self individually in order for your relationship to also grow to the best version of that it can be. Yeah, so that's kind of a romantic relationship side of things. At the same time, my happiness also comes from really like, actually it's mostly relationships, to be honest. I'm not the kind of person who actually have a ton of friends, and I'm not the kind of person who always arranges to meet up with friends, but whenever I meet up with friends, I am super happy to be there with them, and I'm always trying to be present with them. And yeah, I've been trying to open up as much as I can with everyone as well. Again, it's kind of like the whole parenting, like trained behavior. When it's a friend of a decade or like 15 years, it's maybe a bit harder to change. But at the same time, for these friends that have stuck to you for so long, I want you to know you can be totally comfortable with just like opening up, sharing more things. Most of the time, they would take you for that because they themselves have gone through their own changes. So typically people who have changed themselves and are aware that they have changed are more accepting and are more accepting of people's changes, right? But if those friends don't accept you anymore because of the change that you have, it's okay, let them go, right? Like, you're not a bad person just because you focus on who you want to be for yourself and you lost a friend in doing so. Yeah, that's what I believe. So anyway, I've been doing that a lot more for my like friends, right? Platonic friends, guys, girls. Yeah, so platonic friends, and I'm just happier, like so much happier, in a sense that I'm just so much happier, period. And also at the same time, like frustrations or resentment don't build within me. To be honest, I would say at all in the past few months or years, past year, simply because I'm sharing more, right? And again, like this has propelled me and placed me in a position to just be a better version of myself. Yeah, you know, I'm not here to force like positivity or happiness in you guys, but I have to say this, but happiness is really not found in the things that you do. Happiness is found in just simply being happy, right? And I think happiness is also always largely related to you being able to be yourself, right? The more free you are able to express yourself, be yourself, I do think it usually translates to happiness in whatever definition that you have for yourself. Yeah, so that went on quite a while as usual, but I hope this helped you, and I hope this also encourages you to actually just share more, right? Step by step, okay? Start with the people you're very confident in changing with, right? So anyone that has been with you as you have explored different changes and has accepted you, start with them first, right? Share with them more openly, just like one small thing at a time. Or you know what, take the whole plunge and just like share your deepest, darkest secret with them, and see how it goes, right? And the more you do it, like the previous video that I said before, getting your reps in, the more you share, the more you go beyond any kind of worries or concerns that sharing is going to put you in a weaker position. It's going to make you look like you have a lot of issues and things like that. Trust me, those are just your own fears of what are possible, and it's not the reality of things. And even if some friends respond or react like that, know that again, it's just maybe a small pool of people in like a huge sample size, right? Like if you try this and you immediately get a lashback by like one person, don't stop, right? Keep trying to open up and share more with another person, another person, another person, another person. And only once you get to 1,000 people, then you tell me whether or not opening up was good or bad, or like positive or I wouldn't say good or bad, let me take that back. So like positive or negative for you, and see how that goes for you. yeah, so that's the thing for today. Right, share more openly. Drop in the comments below, share something with me, reach out to me, share something with me on Instagram. Yeah, share more openly. I encourage you to do so, and keep going. And as usual, have a great one, and make mistakes, have fun, and just be human. Okay, catch you in the next one.